I should say no real rats were set on fire.
Hello, hello. I feel like I'm going to make a lecture now. I'll keep this short, but it's really great to see you guys. As Cameron said, you know, this is based on a Stephen King book. I had actually, it was first published under his pseudonym, Richard Bachman. And as Cameron said, it's set in the year 2025. It was written in 1973 and unpublished for 9 years until he published it under a pseudonym. The cover of the 1982 paperback, first edition, says this. This is the log line on the actual cover of The Running Man. It says, "Welcome to America in the year 2025, where the best men don't run for president, they run for their lives." That's really what it says. If we put that on the poster now, people would say it was too on the nose. I'm really excited for you to see this. I'm very excited for you to see Brampton's finest, Michael Cera, in the movie. And also, there is a key cameo for the Canadian flag, so please be upstanding when you see that. I had read the book when I was a teenager, you know, because I started reading Stephen King novels at exactly the right age, which is too young. And I'd read this book when I was 14, when it was republished as the Bachman books after his pseudonym was found out. And I'd actually read the book before I saw the previous 1987 adaptation, which if you've read the book and seen the other movie, you know they're two wildly different things. And so I've sort of held the opinion for many years that there was a completely different great movie in the source material. And so it's so great to be, I mean, it's kind of wild that we're in the last 6 weeks of 2025, the year in which Stephen King set it. So it's just been sort of a thrill to kind of work on this movie, something that I'd actively thought about for years, and also to kind of collaborate with Stephen King, you know. So it's just been a total thrill to make this, and, you know, I think you're going to have a good time tonight, and I'll come back and answer all your questions. And, yeah, it's great to be back in the city. I loved working here in 2009, and always love a good excuse to come back to Canada, so this is it. And I really, really hope you enjoy the film. I'll come back and answer all of your questions. And please now enjoy The Running Man. Thank you.
Edgar, congratulations on the movie.
Thank you.
Now we know what 2025 really looks like.
It's happening tomorrow, folks.
Can you maybe start by telling us what first drew you to the story, The Running Man, and which version of The Running Man was it that first attracted you?
Well, yeah, I think like I said in the intro, is like I had read the book when I was a teenager, and I'd read it before I saw the previous adaptation. So it was very, you know, obviously when I read it when I was 14, I wasn't a film director, but you obviously when you read a book, you still visualize it in your head. And strangely, even though it was like, you know, nearly 40 years later actually sort of making it, the things that I really felt very powerful and vivid to me about reading it didn't really change. And I guess the key differences I mean, there's lots of differences about the adaptation, but the things that I really felt strongly about when we were making this was that, number one, who Ben Richards is, that in this movie he's an out-of-work dad, and he's an everyman, and he's you know, he's tough because he works in construction, so he's got a thick hide, but he's not an existing action hero at the start of the movie. And that he goes to the network building by choice, you know, out of desperation, but it's still his own choice to walk the length of the city and get in that line. And then the second thing is that the entire film is from Ben's point of view, which even in the previous movie or other movies in this vein, you might cut to a different perspective or go back to the network building or see what the baddies are up to. But it was like, I just thought it'd be more powerful and intense, very much like the book, which is all from Ben Richards' perspective, to stay with him so you really feel like you're on the game show with him. And you only have the same information that he does. You only can see the rest of the world through what he sees, sometimes just through the TV, which isn't necessarily true. And then the third thing is the game itself is that it's out in the world. When you leave the network building, it's a deadly game of hide and seek on a national, even global level. So you could, in theory, go anywhere. and obviously that made it. I mean, the previous movie kept it sort of contained to sort of like a subterranean arena. And I think when I was a teenager, I was a bit disappointed that the sort of the area of play was so small. But now, having made the movie and done 165 locations, I realized that the makers of the original movie were smart and sensible.
For Ben Richards in your version, you really need an actor who can convey that rage, but who is also someone that the audience is going to really empathize with. A father, but a very angry father in a really impossible situation. So can you tell me about casting Glenn Powell for this role? Also with the knowledge that, you know, the world who's seen the first movie has Arnie in mind, and you're going in a very different direction here, I think.
Yeah, I think, you know, it's obviously, I think one of the, you know, I mean, you know, in the previous movie, like Arnold, you know, he's already Mr. Universe, so it kind of feels like sometimes in that movie that it's no contest between him and some of the baddies. I think that the whole thing with this, and there was a big part of the book for me, is that he has this everyman quality, and it was finding somebody that you could really root for who feels like, you know, that you know him. And even though he's like, Glenn is like, you know, he's a total movie star, but he does have that kind of regular guy feeling to him. Although I wish I looked that good in the towel. But the key thing is that I think he needed to feel like somebody that you would feel like was out of his depth on the game. And, you know, like different films with different kind of roles, but I always thought about the first Die Hard, like, even though John McClane is a cop in that movie, he's still totally out of his depth in the movie. Like, he's not on home turf. Like, he's outnumbered and outgunned. He doesn't have his shoes on. So he's on his heels the entire time. And things like that. And even Harrison Ford in Raiders, where, you know, he's daring do because he's an adventurer and an archaeologist, but he's still sort of wildly improvising, and he's fallible and he makes mistakes. And I think those are things that we kept returning to those. Like, there are lots of action movies these days where the person that you meet who's the main character is already the best at what they do.
Right. They're kind of invincible.
Yeah, I mean, so there's a level of, it's not as much suspense in it because you kind of figure that if they're already set up as being the best hitman or the best spy, you know there's a sort of feeling that they're not really going to be in that much trouble. Where I wanted, like, Ben Richards and Glenn playing him to feel like he could sort of die at any moment, and he's kind of like winging it half the time because he doesn't really have a plan, and when he does have a plan, it goes to shit very quickly. So that was something that was very much in the book, as it felt like even in scenes when he's not running, there's this kind of low-level sort of panic attack feeling. I mean, one of the things that was very much in the novel that I really wanted to bring into this is scenes like when he's in the hotel in New York, and nothing is actually happening, but he's imagining that it might, and that's enough to freak him the fuck out and get out of there, you know?
You've got a terrific cast here, including Josh Brolin and Coleman Domingo, who was just such a pleasure to watch as the host of the game. And you talk a little bit about casting those actors, but also how you're getting those performances out of those actors on set, and especially Coleman, who's got such a big sort of scale to his performance. And I'm just wondering how you kind of brought that all together into one piece.
Well, in the case of Josh, I think the fun thing, I've known Josh for a number of years, but never had a chance to work with him. And the fun thing about doing that character is, I think Dan Killian, his version of the kind of the network executive, is that he has sort of main character syndrome in the sense that he doesn't really he's gaslit himself into thinking that he's doing the right thing. And his default kind of like setting is that the sort of the worst people in entertainment and business act like they're your best friend at all times. And they don't need to bear their fangs because somebody else is going to deliver the bad news. So kind of the most ruthless people that you'll meet in any business are the people who are like, hey buddy, I'm on your side. And the fact that he does that performance all the way through the movie, I think is so sort of deliciously evil, because the most he gets is disappointed with Ben for not wanting to. He doesn't understand why he doesn't want to make money, even if it means many people dying along the way. And in the case of Coleman, it was that actor that you knew not even having met him at the point where we offered it to him, that he would take that role and just kind of like rip the studio roof off. And not just his career in TV and film, but because he was a stage veteran on Broadway and the West End, that I just had this feeling, and I was right as soon as he started doing it, that he was just going to be so great as the ringmaster. And he also did this thing as well, which, and not to say that we didn't have amazing assistant directors, because we did, he did a thing which I think really comes across in the film, is he really engaged with the extras. Like he kind of was like his own warm-up man, and he would get them all whipped up to the point where by the end of the first day, they were chanting his character's name. As soon as he walked onto set on the second day, we weren't even rolling, the audience would be going, Bobby T, Bobby T. And it was just that thing where sometimes when you're making a movie, you know, usually, especially in action scenes, it's like so many moving parts, and it's so kind of complicated and arduous just making it. And then there are those moments, like anytime he was on stage with the extras, where it felt in a good way like it was out of control. That like he has the conch, and he's kind of like, he's like running this scene now, and the extras would do anything he asked
For him.
for him.
Yeah.
And it was, those scenes were like really kind of like felt really electric. There was actually one day where somebody from the accounts department came down and was an extra for the day, and he came up to me at the wrap party, and he said, I so enjoyed my day on set because I got to stand in the crowd and hurl abuse at Glenn Powell all day, somebody that I've never met. And he says, I can't tell you how therapeutic it was.
You're doing a service,
Yes.
Edgar. We're going to have some time for your questions. The last thing I want to ask you is about the set pieces, some really terrific fights and action sequences and chases in the movie. And some of them seem like they're very large scale, lots of moving parts, and yet you find room for some, what I consider to be Edgar Wright details, like the burning rats, for instance. Can you talk a little bit about putting all of that together?
I think it's definitely the most complicated part of it, because a lot of the sequences, that is a good example, that whole sequence in the YVA, like the halfway house that he's in. There's so many elements to it that it's, you know, first it's in the script, then it's in the storyboards. Then after the storyboards, you do an animatic. Then the stunt department get involved, because there's drawing something, and then there's what human bodies can do. And then on top of that, Glenn is playing Ben Richards. He's the center of every scene. He wants to do as many stunts as possible, so you then have to design the action around him. And then also on top of that, speaking to the adaptation of the idea of making it all from his perspective, it's both kind of like you're limiting yourself in terms of the perspective, but it's also very freeing. It's like, we're staying with him, we're going with him, we're not going with the other guys, we're going to stay with him all the way through. So it's an incredibly intensive sequence. There's so many like parts to it and so many details within that. And like you said, it's like there's large scale stuff, and then there's little things like the gag with the Y, saying, and the light bulb was falling on his head, and lots of things that make it sort of tactile, and you feel like it's kind of real. And that was always the thing of just finding the sort of like the tiny detail in the middle of the, But it's funny you mentioned the rats, because I think after we did a preview, and I did say to I should say no real rats were set on fire. But I did say to ILM, I said, more rats on fire. I said, the rats are a hit. We need at least 3 more rats on fire. But you do notice, if you watch it again, there's one rat, just to see that they're okay, there's one rat that you see swimming away, and it puts itself out, which I think is very smart.
That's heartwarming. Thank you. All right, let's turn the lights up a little bit, and we will have some questions from you. We've got people with microphones as well on either side of the room. We will start in the third row here. Let's see if we can get a mic to you. Yep, someone's coming down right now, right here.
Oh. Hey, Edgar. First, I just want to say I've been a big fan of you since I was maybe 13, 14 years old. I think I was way too young to be watching your movies. My question for you is, what game shows did you design the Running Man in your movie to resemble?
I think there's a couple of things. I think when we were designing the set, we said it should be somewhere between UFC and American Idol. Also, Michael Bacall, my co-writer, who co-wrote Scott Pilgrim as well, I definitely, when we were working on the script together, I showed him some very obscure British game shows. A game show called It's a Knockout. A game show called 3-2-1, which is one of the most bizarre and obscure sort of game shows ever. And what was the other one that we were... I guess there was a lot of things, actually, when you're writing, is that unlike when the book was written or even when the previous adaptation was done, you've had like 25 years of a certain type of reality TV. And not only has that kind of exploded all around the world, but I think people are pretty aware like how the sausage is made. And unfortunately, and this is like serious, but there are obviously lots of like really terrible scandals involved in those shows. And lots of things about, you know, I think when somebody wants to be famous as an actor, you've got an awareness of what you're signing up for. But on many reality shows, and this is, you know, we obviously extrapolate that in this, members of the public are not necessarily supposed to be on national TV, and they're definitely not supposed to be made national laughingstocks or made to be the villain. You know, there's literally the phrase in reality TV of the villain edit, of they've created this narrative around somebody. So there's a lot of like stuff, as I'm sure you're aware, not only the scandals, but like the conspiracy theory videos online. So I was literally showing Michael Bacall conspiracy theory videos about X Factor and about what was going on behind the scenes. Just before we started filming with Coleman and Josh, when we did all of those things, which was only in January this year, we only actually started making this movie in November the 3rd, 2024, which is kind of wild. Just before we started filming those scenes, that Jerry Springer documentary came onto Netflix, and it seemed to confirm absolutely everything that was in the script. I don't know if you've seen that documentary, but it's not all fun. There's a lot of dark stuff in that. But it's that thing about like how exactly the thing that's in the movie was exactly the thing in the Jerry Springer documentary. When Glenn is backstage as Ben Richards, Dan Killian and Bobby T all are like his best pals until he goes out on the stage, and then he's in the stocks, and then they're screaming abuse at him, and it's like an immediate betrayal because they're all like, "Hey, you're doing good. You're gonna do great." And then as soon as like he's out, it switches hard. So there was a lot of stuff that we kind of took inspiration from, but it was actually a great thing to actually, you know, there's a thing. This book was set in 2025. The line between, it's like a bleeding edge between fact and fiction at this point. The fiction part of the science fiction is kind of fading away. There's not a lot of technology in the film that doesn't exist. And we were able to write the screenplay with the knowledge of everything that's happened in reality TV in the last 25 years.
Thank you. Let's go up to the back, this side, yes, in red, it looks like. Microphone's on its way to you.
Hi, Edgar, a longtime fan, first-time question asker, but I wanted to ask a specific thing because I know...
Where have you been?
I'm kidding. At home, rewatching your movies compulsively. So I wanted to ask specifically because I know you mentioned that the book was set in 2025 and that the line is kind of being blurred between what was fiction and what is now reality. I noticed a lot of parallels between this film and how people behaved and certain content creators. I don't want to name any people, but I think it's pretty obvious the one that I'm thinking of. Did you pull from any like specific people and outside game shows, any other kind of political, not really political figures, but more like social figures that have almost become political themselves? More so content creators.
I mean, definitely in terms of that idea, that's obviously not in the book, the idea that Bradley is kind of like a super fan stroke conspiracy theorist, but it was definitely something that we felt that there would be that person. I mean, there are for those game shows out there, like a real breakdown of what's really going on behind the scenes. So that was actually Michael Bacall's idea, and it was just such a gift to kind of have that as a visual. I mean, I will say as well, probably one of the most intensive parts of editing, like in the movie, because we had to shoot for the first Apostle video. We had to shoot essentially like a supercut of like 3 other contestants, you know, the hopeless dude, negative dude, and final dude, and show bits from like several episodes. So we had to shoot all of that stuff, and it was fun, but it was really intensive. But I think we took kind of inspiration from quite a few like videos of that ilk. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Let's go over to the side here. Yes, go ahead, Mike. No, up a few rows. Thank you.
Hello. All right. Big fan. I'd just like to know, are there any beats, character beats, or action moments that you've had to cut and in certain test screenings and so forth that you miss or that we'll see on Blu-ray or that you're just right at the right edit? Thank you.
Not anything I miss. I mean, I think the nature of editing is that you know, like the test screening process could sort of like is definitely a white knuckle ride if it's not going your way. And it was actually doing this. We were able to kind of keep working on it and sort of fashioning it in a way. So there are some things, but they're not any things that I miss because usually it's something where it's like it might be the right scene, but it's slowing it down or it just doesn't need it. And so we did actually work really intensively in the post more than ever before, where we were sort of kept kind of writing. And there's so much to do with the commentary and voiceover and Ben's tapes and Bobby T's commentary, where we could keep sort of fashioning it. So it was something where we kept sort of working on it. But there's going to be some fun things on I think there's probably at least 10 minutes of the Americanos on the Blu-ray because we wrote some dialogue for those scenes. And then when you get Debbie Mazar and Kat Cohen and Emma City in the room, they just start improvising like crazy. And so there is a lot of stuff, but nothing that I really like miss. I think it was just something where I always say the final draft of the script is the edit, and that was definitely the case with this, where we kept like working on it right until the very end.
All right, time for just one or two more. I am looking around for places in the theater where I haven't asked the question yet. In the center, right up here, yes. There will be a mic.
I am loud, but
Okay, well, if you're loud.
so I always highlight of your movies are the soundtracks, and I love that you had like Gil Scott-Heron in this. I was wondering if you could talk a bit about the soundtrack of the movie, if there was like songs you wanted that didn't make it, or just your song choices in general.
I think it was some of the things were in the script already, like the Sly and the Family Stone song and the Stones and Gil Scott-Heron. Although as it came closer to release, I started to realize that the Gil Scott-Heron song was also in One Battle After Another. And I hadn't seen that film yet, but I knew people who were working on it, so I emailed them and said, "Hey, and then I realized it was the second song on the end credits. So when I saw the film, I felt better about it. And also, our version is like an instrumental version. And then I also thought, well, if there was one calendar year where that song, The Revolution Will Not Be Televised, crops up twice, it's 2025.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, I think then, and some things I think came in the production, like I think with this one, different than Baby Driver and Last Night in Soho, where the songs inspire the action. Here they're all like thematic. Search and Destroy, Underdog, Heartbreaker. There's that John Conga song I've always loved that the Happy Mondays kind of famously covered. Step On, the original version is He's Gonna Step On You Again. So they're all like...
Step On is a cover.
Yes.
I did not know that.
The original is in the movie. It's an Australian song called He's Gonna Step On You Again. That's why I put it in the film, because people are always like, wait, Step On by the Happy Mondays is a cover. But they're all like thematic ones. And then some things like that you think are definitely going to work. When you watch it like with an audience, it's like the wrong energy. It's the wrong song at the wrong time. Weirdly, the Tom Jones cover of Keep On Running, I was definitely not going to put Keep On Running in the movie because it seemed too obvious, especially the Spencer Davis group version, because it's like one of those trailer songs like I Feel Good by James Brown that's on every trailer ever. And I think I'm not going to use that. And then I was actually posting something about the film on Instagram, and I knew that Tom Jones cover, and I was almost about to post it, and I was like, wait, stop. And I played the song to Glenn, and I said, hey, have you ever heard this? And he goes, that's badass. I said, yeah. maybe it should be the end credit song. So it was, I actually stopped myself putting it on an Instagram stories like, don't burn this song choice, save it. So things sort of develop. Like some of the things were in the script. Some of the things are like, I got to give credit to Michael Bacall, they were his idea. And some things, songs you've always wanted to put in something. So it was, like, and also I felt like this was more of a score film. Like Steve Price, my 4th film with him, but this is the most minutage that he's done music, and he has to do he has to do the score for the movie and then do all of the TV theme tune stuff. So all of the stuff that sounds like X Factor and Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. And Steve said to me the other day he was disturbed at how much he enjoyed doing those bits.
All right, time for just one last question. I think we'll go right down here. Yeah, microphone's also on its way, unless you are also loud. Okay, all right.
Hi, Edgar. Thank you for coming to Toronto, and thank you to Cameron Bailey for moderating and offering TIFF and the fan screening. So I was thinking about with like the action, especially the car chases. It reminded me a lot with Baby Driver, and I was just wondering if filming Baby Driver, like those car sequences, action sequences, helped with the filming of Running Man. Like if there was like a smoother process, if you had any tips that you learned from Baby Driver into filming Running Man.
Yeah, I mean, car chases they're really difficult to shoot, and just because we'd done Baby Driver didn't make the shooting of these things any easier. I mean, I did have the second unit director, Darren Prescott, also worked on Baby Driver. But, we're kind of like creating things that are like a tricky to do, like the scene in the trunk, like when he's in the back of the trunk and then he pops out and then he's, in this alley. Like, it was like difficult stuff to do. And like sort of, shooting at night on location and like, it was fun to do them, but it never makes it any easier. Like car sequences are always a bit of a bear, and like so it's just you just really have to plan them really well, because like car rigs take a long time. So really the sort of key to it is having an amazing AD and camera grips and stuff, because like if you're doing a car chase and you need all the angles, you just gotta prep the shit out of it basically. So it was really like like doing Baby Driver didn't make it any easier. I mean, I love doing car chases, but I kind of have that sort of immediate PTSD whenever I think about it. But it was great shooting. I mean, the one thing that we had on this, which was crazy, is that we shot part of it in Bulgaria at the end. We shot in London and Glasgow and a little bit in Sofia, Bulgaria. And they had this thing called the Ghost. It was like a freeway. That freeway that he's on when he carjacks Amelia Jones is a freeway in Bulgaria where they had never connected either end of the freeway to anything else. So it's just this whole, like, 2 miles of freeway with a bridge and ramps and everything and, like, nothing else. So it was really strange just being in the middle of nowhere on a freeway with, like, nobody else. So that was cool. And you don't usually get that in, like, probably nowhere in Canada or the United States with that. But, like, there was reason enough to go to Bulgaria just for that. I have one thing I've never told this story, but this is the only time to say it, and it actually refers to the sequence. So, when, like, I hope you appreciated that our hero at some point thinks that the best bet is to go to Canada.
Yes.
The only way out of this hellish nightmare is to get to Canada. And that scene when he's on the freeway and you see the Canadian sign, what is he holding in his hand just before he has the idea? No. What did he say? And what color is the sock? Red and white. Now, so he's holding the sock in his hand, and then he gets the idea to go to Canada. And it was in the script at one point, but it was just too goofy. But me and Michael Bacall would just always say it because it was the thing, that we thought that at some point he should hold the sock and look up and go, Canada. And even though we never put it in the film, it was always like, even I think even when Glenn was shooting that shot and like looking at the kind of sock and then looking up, I would off screen go, Canada.
We absolutely love that.
I've
Edgar.
never had the opportunity to tell that anecdote to any audience that would be interested.
Well, this is the night.
So thank you.
Please join me in thanking the director of The Running Man, Edgar Wright. Thank you for coming back.
Thank you,
Toronto,
Cameron.
Edgar.
Lovely to be back. Lovely to see you guys. Thank you for coming.